Ritesh Agarwal's introduction as a new shark on Shark Tank this year was accompanied by another personal milestone for him. His startup Oyo finally became profitable after seeing through some tough times. But what makes this achievement even more notable is the state that Oyo was in just a couple of years ago. Travel and tourism was the worst hit sector due to COVID-19. And as the leading hotel chain in India, Oyo was one of the hardest hit companies. From over 13,000 crore rupees in the financial year ending in March 2020, its revenue dropped by almost 70% to about 4,000 crore rupees for FY 2021. Huge layoffs followed at Oyo. The workforce was decreased by 75% in just 1 year. From over 10,000 employees at the start of 2020, Oyo was down to less than 2,500 employees by the end of the year. Oyo's valuation reduced from $10 billion to about $2.7 billion as an aftermath of this internal bloodbath. But while many thought after COVID that the end of Oyo was near, Ritesh Agarwal managed to pull off one of the most spectacular turnaround stories of all time. After a net loss of over 13,000 crore rupees in FY 2020, almost equaling its total revenue for that year, Oyo decreased its loss to less than 4,000 crores in FY 2021, which was expected since they also reduced their revenue by the same margin. But since then, almost as if using a magical lever to turn down the losses, Oyo has seen an increase in revenue with a corresponding decrease in its losses. And then in FY 2023, which ended last year, they further increased their revenue to almost 5,500 crore rupees, while bringing the loss below rupees 1,300 crores. And then Oyo announced that it would be declaring its first profitable quarter ever in FY 2024 with a profit after tax of rupees 30 crores. Now you might be wondering here, how did Ritesh Agarwal manage such a magnificent turnaround of Oyo? How did Oyo manage to turn a loss of 13,000 crore rupees into a profit? And what does this mean for the upcoming IPO of Oyo? Let's start by understanding how Oyo really works. So hotels can be divided into two types. On one hand, you have large hotels that have over 100 rooms. These hotels are usually owned by large chains like Marriott, Hilton or Ginger. And then there are smaller hotels that have individual owners with a room count anywhere between 10 rooms to 100 rooms. Now, these small hotels started facing a very unique problem ever since OTAs or online travel agents like Booking.com came along. While larger chains were quick to adapt and establish an online presence, small hotels were left behind. These hotels did not know how to establish an online presence by posting good photos and getting good reviews. So when a customer went to an OTA like Booking.com or Make My Trip, he could not differentiate and decide if any of these small hotels were good. Large hotel chains had excellent photos and a lot of good ratings and reviews. So if a hotel was not tech savvy and had no good photos or ratings, it did not receive any bookings, no matter how good it was in reality. And then, this gave rise to a vicious cycle. Since there weren't enough bookings, the small hotel owner ended up running the property at an occupancy as low as 20%, which meant low revenue. And since the revenue was low, he could not afford to offer a premium experience like clean rooms with all amenities. And since the experience was not good, the hotel had negative customer reviews and ratings, which in turn meant fewer bookings and less occupancy. And the cycle continued. So because these small properties had no technology and no photos, they were unable to compete with larger chains. And some of them did not have any online presence to begin with. But their poor performance did not mean that they were a minority. In fact, only 10% of hotels in India had more than 100 rooms. Roughly 90% of hotels had less than 100 rooms and were facing this issue. And this was precisely where Oyo approached them with a partnership deal. Oyo said that it will co-brand the hotel, helping them improve their rooms by maintaining a standard, provide them with a tech stack that included taking photos and establishing a presence on all major OTAs, and ensure that they get enough revenue from their property. In return, Oyo would get the rights to become their exclusive revenue management partner. They would get a revenue share from all the bookings that the hotel receives. Crucially, the deal also said that Oyo would decide the pricing of all their rooms. And even if they get a booking outside of the Oyo app, the hotel would still have to share the revenue with Oyo since it was now a co-branded property. And to make the deal lucrative to these hotels, Oyo promised a minimum guarantee, which meant that even if the hotel did not get any bookings at all, Oyo would still pay them a guaranteed minimum amount every single month. This last point meant that there was absolutely no risk but only upside for the hotel owner to partner with Oyo. After partnering with these hotels, Oyo took end-to-end responsibility for customer experience. A property manager was assigned to each property whose sole job was to audit the hotel every week. and ensured that it passed over 150 audit metrics on its quality checklist, like cleanliness of the rooms and toilets, conditions of the air conditioner, and so on. The OYO app was also a game changer in the OTA space, and it gave stiff competition to Booking.com and other OTA agents. It offered affordable rooms that could be easily found and booked on the app with a seamless checkout flow. All of this meant that OYO was able to double the revenue of any property that they partnered with in just 3 months of onboarding them. As a result, OYO saw meteoric growth in the next few years. Starting with just one hotel in 2013 in Gurgaon, it had more than 23,000 hotels by 2019 in more than 800 cities in 80 countries all across the world. Their international expansion was so incredible that they had become the single largest hotel brand in China by 2019. But there was a problem. It was bleeding an unbelievable amount of money. By FY 2020, or the year just before COVID, it had become one of the largest hotel brands in the world. But it also clocked a loss of over 13,000 crore rupees, which was almost equal to the revenue that it made. I spent a whole week doing the research for this video. If you made it this far, please support me by subscribing to my channel. Moving on. So now, you might be wondering that if its hotels were so successful and its growth so meteoric, why was it still bleeding money, right? To understand that, let's look at the unit economics of OYO before 2020. Let's say that there is a booking of GBV or gross booking value rupees 100. Then out of this rupees 100, 66 rupees went straight to the hotel owner as his share, and OYO was left with rupees 34. Now out of this 34 rupees, it gave 14 rupees as loyalty discount to customers. Then they used to bear rupees 8 on average as MG or minimum guarantee charges. This is the same minimum guarantee that OYO promised to all its hotels, as I explained earlier in the video. 2 rupees was the cost of operating the storefront, 4 rupees for other direct costs, and 1 rupee was the cost of customer support. So this meant that out of every 100 rupees of booking revenue, they were left with only 5 rupees as the final profit on a unit level. After taking into account other expenses that the company incurred, a 5% margin was not enough to break even, let alone make a profit. And this fundamental flaw in their unit economics was the prime reason for their losses running into thousands of crores of rupees. Since they were essentially losing money on every single booking, the more they grew, the higher their losses became. So now, the question that arises is, how did they suddenly turn their awful unit economics upside down? Well, it all started with the breakout of COVID-19. As the entire world shut down and OYO experienced a drastic drop in their revenue as well as losses, they decided to use this opportunity and undergo a course correction. All startups need to balance 3 metrics at all times in order to grow: scale, economics, and customer satisfaction. Fall in any one of these 3 and you are dead. The problem is that growth in any of these 3 metrics is extremely likely to come at the cost of the other 2. If you focus on profitability and customer satisfaction too much, you may not be left with enough resources to scale. If you focus on just scaling rapidly while saving costs, you might end up compromising on customer experience. And if you focus on scaling while maintaining customer satisfaction, that can potentially result in a decline in profits. And the last scenario was what was unfolding with OYO. In a bid to become the biggest hotel chain in the world that offered the best experience, they had severely messed up their economics. So OYO decided to press the brakes on scaling and started focusing on repairing their economics while preserving the customer experience. They started focusing on the properties that generated the highest profit margin. The number of properties was cut down by 35%, from over 18,000 to just 13,000 properties. Then, Ritesh Agarwal also realized that the largest cost component for OYO was actually its employee expenses, accounting for 18% of the overall revenue. After this realization, OYO underwent a serious HR restructuring and started optimizing operational costs, and it had a series of layoffs throughout 2020. From over 10,000 employees at the beginning of 2020, OYO was down to under 2,500 employees by December 2020 as they shifted to a lean model of operation. As painful as it was, it actually worked, and OYO's employee expenses decreased by 63% year on year by FY 2021. And then, finally, they set their eyes on improving the unit economics. In 2021, while keeping the profit sharing with the properties the same, OYO cut down on other costs. The most significant of which was eliminating the minimum guarantee altogether from 8% to 0. Since it had now established a reputation, OYO did not need to woo hotels to become their partners with a minimum guarantee, because it was now the other way around, where hotel owners needed OYO in order to make a profit. They made other changes as well, reducing the discounts from 14% to 11% and the storefront costs from 2% to 0. All this meant that Oyo was now able to have a contribution profit of 18% of gross booking value, which was 13% higher than its earlier profits. And by taking all these measures and fixing the unit economics, Oyo came to a place where the more it grew, the more profits it would earn. Once their economics were in place, Oyo started gradually scaling again, this time slow and careful to not mess up with the profits in the process. Oyo saw 27% increase in the number of hotels on its platform to 17,000 over the last year alone, and a 14% increase in revenue as it posted EBITDA earnings of Rs 750 crores in calendar year 2023. And Oyo's profit after tax continues to soar at Rs 16 crores for the second quarter, 30 crores for the third quarter, and 100 crores estimate for the fourth quarter of FY 2024. While reports say that with all these profits, Oyo is eyeing an IPO later in 2024, there are sources that say that Oyo might be taking a U-turn on going public once again and take the private funding route instead. So it remains to be seen whether you and I will be able to buy shares of Oyo anytime soon. If you made it this far, subscribe here and follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. The link is in the description below. Until I see you in the next video, goodbye.